guys. So that's when my show ends. So tomorrow we'll do a rundown of all the stuff that comes out of the Apple conference, but right now we don't have a whole lot of info about what's going on within Apple because it's just hints and teases and such. TechCrunch has a cool article, though, saying that after weeks of speculation, today is the day that Apple is going to be taking over the massive Bill Graham Civic Auditorium in San Francisco to announce a whole lot of stuff. According to the whispers from around the rumor mill, today could even bring in something from a new iPhone to release details about iOS 9 to an overhauled version of the Apple TV. The event is going to be starting at 10 a.m. Pacific time, which is 1 our time, 1 p.m. our time. That's 7 a.m. if you're in Hawaii and a bunch of other times. You can figure it out. TechCrunch is going to be there. Quite a few different outlets are going to be there. Obviously, I'm not going to be there because I'm here and I have to be here. But that's okay because there's a lot of different articles that are going to be posted about it. We can do a whole bunch of analysis based on that. Now, you might be noticing something about me, which is that I sound noticeably bad. The reason for that is I've spontaneously come down with something. I don't know what. I think it's seasonal or something, but I feel like my sinuses are going to blow right out of my face. But if you notice that I sound like I'm on the verge of death, that would be why, and I'm not saying my ends correctly either, so that's why. I have to be sure to wipe down the microphone. I have to dip it in alcohol before Keon comes on with his sports show, Clutch with Keon Rose, which is, of course, coming up next here on Hot News Talk Radio AM 1240. So the big announcements coming out of Apple so far. We don't have a whole lot of information about it, but we do have some information about what might be coming out with the Apple Watch. We're getting some new info about that. The Apple Watch is, of course, kind of exciting in the sense that it's a wearable and it's pushing Android wearables to be better, so that's always a good thing. In case you couldn't tell, I'm an Android person. I'm not a huge fan of Apple. It's not really my taste. And I will say that macOS 10 is not an awful operating system. You know, I know people who used it. I have used it. I used it for myself for a long time, and it's useful if you're in the field of the arts, we'll say. Like if you have to edit video, then you can certainly use a Mac computer and you'll be perfectly happy. Plus, most everything is centered on the web these days, so there's not really anything you can do or can't do on a Mac that you can't do on a Windows computer or Linux computer when it comes to the web. So that's good too, that a lot of apps are becoming web-centric because that means that they're very cross-platform. Like Netflix, it's not like you can't use Netflix because you're on a Mac or something like that. So we're seeing good developments coming out of that, which is, of course, good for us because it means there's competition with different platforms. Now, it doesn't really matter what platform you're running a whole lot, not as much as it used to anyway. I mean, back in the day, it used to be that if you ran a Mac, there were tons of different programs that you just could not run. It's same as you were on a IBM PC, where there were just tons of programs you could not run that were from the Amiga or the Commodore 64 before that, or on the Windows computers, or excuse me, on the Macintosh computer. So there are a lot of different differences in programs that could be run on different platforms. And really, that's changed a lot, especially with the development of free open source software, where pretty much anyone can run anything. If it's an open source program, it's probably compiled for your system if it's an open source program. So like, for instance, there's not really a whole lot of need anymore for Microsoft Office because we have programs like OpenOffice and LibreOffice. I use LibreOffice here at the office, and I use it quite a lot. It's a great alternative to MS Office. And actually, if you can't afford, say, a license for Office 365 for every single workstation at your small business, then LibreOffice is a great alternative. And it works just fine. If you're doing word processing and you're centered more on, say, spreadsheets and that sort of thing, LibreOffice is going to work just fine for you. And it's a free alternative, and it's great. And I'm not being paid to say that because I don't think they make any money, actually, over at the LibreOffice team. You can donate, but that's about it. So I'm not being paid by them to say that. I legitimately do use it here at the office quite often. And there's all sorts of different free alternatives to paid software that you can use. And it's not, free doesn't mean cheap, or free doesn't mean, you know, just crappy. You know, it doesn't mean bad. Free means it's free, and it's developed by people who really care about the program, who want to see a free alternative to paid programs. Paid programming, you might say, like we used to have on TV. Actually, I think we still do. I don't watch TV, so I don't know. But again, a good alternative to Libre or to OpenOffice. Pardon. A good see, I'm sick, so I can't think of words. A good alternative to MS Office, Microsoft Office, is LibreOffice and OpenOffice. I prefer LibreOffice. It has a few benefits over OpenOffice, but it's up to you, really. It's free, so how can you go wrong? And LibreOffice is available for Mac OS. It's available for Windows machines. I use it on Linux here at work. So there's all sorts of good alternatives to what we would normally see with paid software. Like, can you imagine if you had to pay for your web browser? How crazy would that be? Well, actually, kind of back in the day, you sort of did have to on Windows, where you kind of sort of had to pay for Internet Explorer in the sense that it came bundled with Windows, and you really had no choice but to use it for the very first time you used it. So you're kind of paying actually like $100-something if you got a Microsoft Windows license to get Internet Explorer. And then you had an alternative that was, I don't know if Netscape was actually free and open source, but it was at least free with Netscape. So all sorts of different alternatives came out of that. It's very interesting how the world of technology has changed just over the last 5 years even, where now it doesn't really matter a whole lot what platform you're running. If you're running Mac or you're running Windows, you can pretty much do all the same stuff. Especially if you're using, say, Google Docs, which you can run on any platform ever, so long as it supports like HTML, you can run Google Docs. So you can run that on any platform at all. So cloud-based software is becoming a lot more popular nowadays too. So it really doesn't matter so much what operating system you're running nowadays. You're not really going to run into compatibility problems nearly as much as you would in the 90s. And even the early 2000s, you're not going to run into compatibility problems nearly as much. It does help that we're all using basically the same processor nowadays too, because Apple computers are all using Intel Intel CPUs, and we're all using Intel CPUs or AMD CPUs on our Windows and Linux machines as well. So there's next to no difference really when it comes to compiling a program from a Mac computer to a Windows computer. It's just one's Unix based and one is Windows NT based, and you just have to put in a few DLLs and all sorts of different little things to make them compatible, but it's really not a big deal these days. That's what we're seeing, a lot more games being compatible with both Linux, or all three, I should say, Linux, Mac OS, and Windows, which is really exciting. But anyway, ahead of today's Apple event, which again is at 1 o'clock today, I'll be following it quite closely. Basically, as soon as the show ends here today, I'm going to be jumping off of the microphone after wiping it down thoroughly for Keon because I'm sick. I'll jump over to my computer, watch the Apple conference, and then talk about it tomorrow. So you can look forward to that, I guess. So ahead of today's event, where it's expected the company is going to be officially announcing a new version of Apple Watch software, watchOS 2.0. Among other things, the App Store analytics firm App Annie has released new data on the status of the Watch App Store today. Specifically, the company finds that there are 11,469 Apple Watch apps live in the iOS App Store. Now, that's not bad. That's actually a noticeable increase from the 6,352 apps that it found in June of this year and the 7,567 apps that were there in July. While some of these early apps have struggled with how to best take advantage of the small wrist-attached screen, and it's arguable that not all apps actually need a watch counterpart, the proliferation of apps in a relatively short time does indicate the strength of Apple's developer ecosystem. Developers' willingness to experiment with new platforms and Apple devices as soon as they become available has allowed this third-party ecosystem to bloom and fill with content for the Apple Watch user base to test out. Somewhat surprisingly, App Annie has found that the category with the largest number of apps was actually games, which seems odd given that gaming on a wristwatch's tiny screen is really not a very fun experience, or an ideal one anyway, especially when the watch owners already have an iPhone in their pocket. So why would you want to play a game on a watch? Perhaps to be more discreet in class? I don't know. Now, let's talk about real world stuff, because we can talk about numbers all day, but real world, what are we seeing? Well, I don't really see a whole lot of people wearing Apple Watches, and I'm just creepy enough to look for them when I see people in the mall. I don't see a whole lot of Apple Watches. I do see some, but not a whole lot. Maybe that's because we're in a medium market and it's just not really expected that you would see them, but I don't see a whole lot of Apple Watches. I do see Pebbles sometimes, though, interestingly enough. The Pebble smartwatch, which is one of the first smartwatches ever, I do see it sometimes. Now, I personally, because I run a Windows or a Android machine, I run an Android phone, I should say, I'm not going to get an Apple Watch. I have no interest in it. But I will probably be getting myself not really a Galaxy Gear, because why would I do that when I'm not running a Samsung device or a Galaxy device or anything like that? But I might be getting some sort of Android Wear device. Motorola has a smartwatch I might be looking into, because I have a Motorola Moto G that I'm running. So I don't know. The smartwatch market is kind of interesting, but what practical application does it have other than just its novelty? What practical application can we apply to the smartwatch? Well, Not a whole lot, actually, when it comes right down to it. There's not a whole lot that the smartwatch can do that you couldn't already do on your phone just by whipping it out and waving it around. So there's not a whole lot of functionality that the Apple Watch has when it comes right down to it. Should you spend the extra, however much money it is, like $500 on an Apple Watch? I would say no, you probably shouldn't, especially if we're talking about prudent purchasing, which I'm really big into. I'm into saving money where at all possible, which is partially why I run Linux, actually. So, should you buy an Apple Watch? I would say not yet. It's not really there as a platform, but then again, it needs to be adopted to become a platform that's viable. So, it's sort of a fine line. You get an early adopter's fee, that's for sure, but I wouldn't recommend actually a smartwatch at all at this point because there's not really a whole lot of use for the average person. I really don't see a whole lot of use for a smartwatch. I see zero reason to own one. So there's not really a whole lot going for smartwatches right now. But that's not to say that there won't be in the future. Like people would say back in the 80s that really there's no reason to have a MP3 player because the technology just isn't there and you can only store about 10 songs on it, whereas I can store many cassettes in my backpack. So why would you ever want an MP3 player? I think maybe that's the same idea that's going with a smartwatch, where possibly eventually the smartwatch will be the platform and the phone will go away completely. It just depends on what the market's going to be doing. So it's hard to say at this point. You can't really predict the tech market very well because trends change, new technologies come out. Tomorrow there could be some new development that's totally unprecedented. So trying to predict it is not a very good idea at this point. But what we can say is that the Apple conference is going to be tomorrow, and we can at least look at what's going to be coming out for these different devices, what the new OS is going to be like. Maybe we can get a good idea of what the heck to buy when it comes right down to the whole purchasing side of it. So with Watch OS 2.0, we can expect to see new subcategories of watch apps emerge that are working to tap into the device's unique feature set. For instance, App Annie, which again is an app analytics group, I suppose, earlier suggested that it could allow apps that allow for body temperature reading or those that communicate via the Taptic engine. The new OS will bring increased developer interest in building for the device, as those who were waiting for the platform to mature some before diving in will now begin work on their own watch app at last. So Angry Birds for the smartwatch coming soon, I guess. Maybe. I don't play the game anyway, so I don't really have any interest. On the subject, though, of fitness, that is an interesting application because a lot of us do buy pedometers and all that sort of thing so we can track how many steps we've taken every day. Having that built into our smartphone could be a fun addition, although I don't see why it couldn't be on the smartphone and not on the Apple Watch. So I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see how that one develops. But smartwatches do have reasons to exist. It's just not all there yet. It's one of those things where it's not quite there. I don't see a reason to buy one yet. But eventually, we'll see a good reason to buy a smartwatch, and then you can jump on it. Well, one cool thing that's coming out of the tech revolution is different people running for office, actually. Yeah, we're seeing quite a few people running for office, or at least I can name two. We already have seen Kim Dotcom run for, I believe, Parliament in New Zealand, and that was kind of cool. But now we have my personal hero, John McAfee, running for president as a member of the Cyber Party. He's got my vote. On Tuesday, yesterday, John McAfee, who's best known for founding the eponymous, meaning it's named after him, software firm McAfee Security, to which he is no longer affiliated. In fact, he doesn't really like it that much. He filed with the Federal Election Commission, or FEC, to announce his intent to run for the office of President of the United States. In an interview that he had with Wired, which was posted earlier today, McAfee said that he was still in a quandary about whether to run myself or find someone else for my party. My advisors are pressing me to run, the self-described eccentric millionaire told the magazine. It seems as though the unnamed advisors won out by the end of the day. In his filing, McAfee stated, "I am founding a new party, yet to be announced." Ars Technica contacted McAfee for clarification, who then directed them to send questions to his campaign manager, Drew Thompson, saying, "I believe you will get little information until our platform is fully outlined." Now we have found out, via Ars Technica, of course, that McAfee is going to be running as a member of the new Cyber Party. Sounds fun. I've had cyber parties before. I don't remember any of them. In terms of ideology and aims, it's not really related to any existing party, he said in the email. McAfee is expected to make a statement tomorrow, Thompson added. With his interview with Wired this morning, McAfee cited government technological illiteracy as a primary motivation in his decision to run for the U.S.'s highest elected office. Now, how cool would that be to have John McAfee as the president? Because he's just crazy enough to be a decent president, actually. Now, the thing is, when it comes to politics, I don't like anybody. I really don't. There's not any single politician who I can point at and say, I like that guy, except for possibly Ron Paul, and that's about it. And he's not really a politician anymore, so I can't really point at any one guy and say, he's my guy. I don't like Trump. I really don't like Trump, actually. I'm not a fan of Cruz. I don't like any of the people who are running. Bernie Sanders is, well, he's Bernie Sanders. I mean, he's got heart, but he's a socialist, so I can't really vouch for that one. But, you know, he's got his heart in it, so I guess he has that going for him. But again, he's a socialist, and I'm really not, so yeah, John McAfee might be the go-to guy for me. I don't know. We'll have to see. John McAfee running for president certainly is an interesting idea. Now, maybe a rundown on John McAfee should be in order. John McAfee originally, back in the 90s, or possibly even late 80s, invented some antivirus software. He was a contractor for Lockheed. He worked for government contractors for quite a long time, and he developed antivirus software called McAfee Antivirus, which at the time was kind of revolutionary. It was really cool, actually. It was a great idea. Nowadays, antivirus software is all over the place. You can get Kaspersky, you can get Malwarebytes, you can get Norton, I guess, is still an option. You can get McAfee, of course, is still an option, although it's not run by McAfee anymore. I believe it's owned by Dell, and there's quite a few others, actually. So there's a lot of different options for antivirus. Of course, Windows, Microsoft has one built in. Windows Defender is a viable option, although not the best. It is an option. At least it comes bundled. And if you run a Mac, well, just be careful what you download, I suppose. There is some antivirus software for Macs. I've never used it. I don't see a whole lot of need to, but you might want to just be prudent in your use of a computer. Macs are not virus-proof, but they're a little bit more secure than a Windows machine, I guess, mostly because it's only a minority of computer users who have Macs, but long story. Anyway, John McAfee is kind of a genius computer coder. He's also sort of a mad genius. He's known for his eccentricity, we'll put it that way. He's a really interesting person, though. I wouldn't say he's my role model, but he's certainly someone who I have looked to for technical analysis. He writes really interesting stuff. He's also he's a yoga instructor as well. He's just an interesting person all around. Definitely read into him when you get the chance. Read his Wikipedia article, but of course take it with a grain of salt because it is a Wikipedia article about a currently existing person, so you're not going to get 100%. You're not going to get a 100% accuracy. But anyway, really interesting, the fact that he's running for president. I would like to see how that continues. Could it be that the Cyber Party in the United States will be the equivalent of the Pirate Party in Europe, where the Pirate Party, similar idea, has gotten actually some seats in different parliaments. I believe Iceland is one country that has Pirate Party people in their parliament, in its parliament, I should say. So it's an interesting development, that's for sure. The Cyber Party, I don't know, maybe they'll run for the Cyber Party. Run with the Cyber Party, I should say. I get the feeling that it's less a political party than it, of course it is a political party, but I get the idea that it's less political goals than it is educational goals, because we do have a really big problem with computer illiteracy. I mean, we have, of course, John McCain's a very prominent Republican senator who is a self-described computer illiterate person. And that's not good. We don't need people who don't know how computers work when computers are sort of integral to our everyday lives. And they're passing laws about computers, and yet they don't understand these computers. So that sort of leads to a whole bunch of problems. We have cyber espionage acts when the people who wrote them don't actually understand how computers work. We have the DMCA, which is written by people who don't actually understand how computers work and voted for by people who also don't understand how computers work. So lots of different problems arise when it comes to senators and congressmen voting on computer bills because they don't actually understand how computers work. So the Cyber Party could be an important educational tool. I'm interested to see how it develops anyway, and I'll certainly be keeping my eye on it. This is Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240, right here on hotnewstalkradio.com as well.
This is a mob mode. This is the mob mode. What kind of fool do you think I am? Just think I know nothing of
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Sky Aerial Services uses advanced drone technology to give you a better perspective and depth of your property and project. We offer aerial photography and video for your business, farm, home, or advertising campaigns, as well as editing services to complete the experience. Call us at 423-521-0284 and see how we can help you tell your story about your business, property, or project. We work with real estate professionals, both commercial and residential, developers, engineer inspectors, surveyors, ad agencies, auto and boat dealers, mapping services, insurance inspectors, corporate marketing, charity events, weddings, and photographers. Our consultation is free. Call 423-521-0284. That's 423-521-0284, or visit our website, skyaerialservices.com. Sky Aerial Services. The sky is our limit.
We've got a table here at Delia's in Saudi Daisy, ready to delight in a plate of authentic Mexican food. Delia's spreads a rich selection: loaded nachos, crazy chicken, homemade tamales, maybe the enchiladas with beef, chicken, pork, quesadillas. Every dish beautifully pictured on the menu to help us decide. Join us for lunch or dinner. We're at Delia's in Saudi Daisy on Dayton Pike near the Thrasher Light. Here's dinner. Delia's uses the freshest ingredients, cooked to perfection. Nachos, homemade. Delia's open every day except the Lord's Day. For lunch and dinner, treat yourself to Delia's genuine Mexican food. In Saudi, call 521-7145. That's 521-7145.
This is America Now with Meghan McCain.
Al Gore running is crazy. You're flying around in your private jet all over the world, and you want average Americans to care about the environment. Don't you think you should be doing your part as well?
Meghan McCain, weekdays at 7 p.m.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Hi, I'm David Tulis, inviting you to make the move with me 9 to 11 a.m. weekdays here at AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. The David Tulis Show, featuring Nooganomics.com for Chattanooga and beyond. 9 to 11 a.m. weekdays.
Hot News Talk 1240.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Fox News Radio, I'm Pat O'Neill. A Baltimore City Board has approved a $6.4 million settlement for the family of Freddie Gray. Mayor Stephanie Rawlings Blake says it's clear the police department needs reform.
We have challenges that we need to overcome. That's why I took the step to ask the Department of Justice to participate with us in a collaborative review.
Gray died while in police custody. Congressional debate getting underway over the Iran nuclear deal.
Ask every senator to reflect upon its gravity.
Republican leader Mitch McConnell wants every senator at their desk in the chamber for that debate, a rare sight. But supporters appear to have the votes to block a resolution. 42 Democrats favor the Iran deal enough to filibuster.
Fox Radio's Jared Alpern, a former Iowa lottery official, has been sentenced to 10 years in prison for trying to rig a computerized lotto game 5 years ago.
IRS problems.
News. We report, you decide.
12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga.
There's more to Fox News Radio than meets the ear. Go behind the...
Well then, I'd like to point out the differences between two headlines here, because I think it's really funny, the difference in, well, headlines here. Anyway, this is Digital Drive. I'm your host, Russell. We're talking about technology and quite a bit more. Now, NBC, of course, is a popular news outlet. We also have Ars Technica, which is a very popular tech news outlet. And I source from Ars Technica all the dang time. If you know me, you know that I read Ars pretty much every day. Not pretty much. I read Ars every day, multiple times every day. I read The Verge every day, multiple times every day, and TechCrunch and Extreme Tech and all sorts of different tech sources. I'm reading them all day, every day, when I'm not trying to run Mac OS 9 in a virtual environment, which is, I don't know, it's sort of a weird hobby of mine. I try to run obsolete operating systems in virtual machines. I really need to get a life. But anyway, the fun thing is, pardon again, I'm still sick here. Maybe I should self-medicate with cigarettes and alcohol, which is what I usually do. No kidding. So the difference in headlines is really kind of funny. On Ars Technica, we have, of course, we're talking about John McAfee. On Ars Technica, we have antivirus mogul John McAfee to run for president as a member of the Cyber Party. I messed up my own headline. All right. So then on NBC, ex-fugitive antivirus creator John McAfee running for president. So I love the difference in headlines there, where The Arsenic article sort of saves the negative bits for last, where it mentions that he's a fugitive, or former fugitive, I should say. He was arrested in Guatemala, all sorts of fun stuff. In his interview with Wired, it says this morning, McAfee cited government technological illiteracy as a primary motivation for his decision to run for the U.S.'s highest elected office. That's the highest elected office, not the actual highest office, I guess. Just 3 years ago, McAfee was arrested in Guatemala for allegedly entering the country illegally, which is kind of funny to consider that John McAfee may or may not have been an illegal immigrant, which is kind of funny, after authorities in Belize wanted to question him in their investigation of a murder case where his neighbor may or may not have been murdered. We don't actually know. The police in Belize told reporters that McAfee was not a suspect. So they want to question him, but he's not a suspect. So what is he then? McAfee then showed up months later in Portland, Oregon, where he said that he was working on a graphic novel with a local artist. The new presidential candidate listed an Alabama address on his FEC filing. That's the Federal Election Commission, by the way. So John McAfee running for president. Does he have my vote? Possibly, maybe. I don't know. I don't know enough about his platform or about the Cyber Party to say yet, mostly because the Cyber Party has only been founded today. It's only a day old, and not even that, actually. So does the Cyber Party have my vote is the question. Possibly, maybe, is the answer. We'll have to see. I'm not much of a voting guy anyway, so we'll have to see on that one. But if he can convince me that he's the best person for the presidential office, then yes, John McAfee will have my vote. The NBC article is pretty funny, too, because it's written by, well, someone who's a journalist, not so much a tech journalist. Computer antivirus creator John McAfee, the self-described eccentric millionaire turned fugitive from Belize, filed paperwork yesterday to run for president of the United States as a third-party candidate. I like, too, how third-party candidate sort of puts you on a tier below the other two parties, like somehow the other two parties are better than the third party somehow. I don't know. He says, I'm founding a new party yet to be announced. McAfee, who turns 70 next week, said in a statement of candidacy that was filed with the Federal Election Commission, which was first reported by the political newspaper The Hill. A campaign website has appeared as well. Details on the new party come as early as today, when McAfee, who's no longer associated with the software that bears his name, has promised an official announcement at 6 p.m. today. So keep that in mind. 6 p.m. today Eastern, we'll get an announcement out of John McAfee, which is, funnily enough, the hour after my show at 5. So lots of things are happening after my shows. Isn't that fun? The Apple conference is happening at 1 Eastern today, which is when Clutch with Keon Rose comes on. Not that I'm angry at Keon, not at all. He runs a very good show. But I might just burst in to say that Apple's announced a new phone. I don't know. If it's relevant, I might. We'll have to see. And the announcement for 6 p.m. Is an hour, again, after my show at 5. Hot News Live at 5. So go figure. Lots of annoying time differences going on there, but oh well. McAfee has led a colorful and highly public life since he sold the last of his shares in McAfee Associates almost 20 years ago, back when I was non-existing yet. Just last month, he was arrested in Tennessee, of all places, on charges of driving under the influence and possession of a handgun under the influence. But it was his detention in Guatemala in late 2012 on suspicion that he'd entered the country illegally that made McAfee's name widely known outside of tech circles. McAfee crossed into Guatemala to evade investigators in Belize who wanted to question him in connection with the death of his neighbor. He was then deported to the U.S. a few weeks later. Now, something that's kind of fun is that I think it was 2020 or Nightline or Dateline or one of those shows that did a bio, I guess, of John McAfee and the whole situation that went on in Belize with his neighbor mysteriously dying. And it was really interesting, but it seemed to paint him in a negative light almost intentionally, I think. There was a bit of, I don't know if bias is the right word, but they presented very good facts. I'll put it that way. But the way they presented the facts was a little bit, I don't know, it painted him to be like this psychotic guy, and I don't think he is that. But again, I have personal biases too, so it was an interesting piece anyway. Again, Wikipedia is probably, funnily enough, one of the better resources when you want to get a quick bio on somebody. So read the Wikipedia article for John McAfee if you want to find out more about him. Well, Google's VP9 codec is going to be coming to Internet Explorer. That might not mean a whole lot to you because this is kind of a technical thing, but it's kind of important, believe it or not. The VP9 codec is Well, it's a really good codec. Now, a codec is we don't need to get into what codecs are, but basically there's different file formats and there's different encoding methods for movies, videos online. That's pretty simple, right? I mean, we can figure that out easily enough. There's the AVI Windows Media codec. There's the Apple codec that I can never remember. QuickTime, of course, is one. And there's the MPEG-2 and MPEG-4, Layer 4. There's all sorts of different codecs that you can use for encoding video. Well, VP9 is a new one that Google's developing. It's free and open source. And it's pretty neat because it can be put in an MP4 container, or you can use AAC, I think, for audio. And it's usually contained in the WebM container. And this can now be uploaded to YouTube. And it's pretty good compression. It looks great. And it's very smooth, supports 60 frames per second. Really, there's all sorts of good things that can be said about WebM. Well, now it's going to be supported by Microsoft Edge, which is the new web browser that's the successor to Internet Explorer. So if you want smooth, cool video on Internet Explorer, or sorry, Microsoft Edge, then you can watch WebMs now. Of course, if you're running VLC as your main video watching program, then you can watch it through that anyway. So I don't know, but WebM is really an interesting codec. It's an interesting format. I'm really excited about the future of online video because you'd think that we would sort of be seeing the opposite of what we're seeing. What we're seeing now is actually file sizes getting smaller as storage space increases, which you'd think we'd have the opposite effect. But actually, file sizes are actually going down as technology is expanding the hard drive space that we have available. So we're constantly wanting to be more and more efficient with smaller and smaller file sizes. The reason being, not everyone has a gigabit, EPB connection. Not everybody has that. And so we need to cater to people. Now, I say we, but people in the video development or video distribution industry, I should say, need to develop different development. Geez, I can't think of words today. I got my head all muddled up. Develop different delivery methods. There we go. For video that's faster, more efficient, better with your hardware, all sorts of good stuff. Think about it this way. With image formats, we've been using basically the same 3 image formats for the last 20 years now. We've been using JPEG, we've been using PNG more recently, and we've been using GIF files. And yes, it's pronounced GIF. I don't care what the creator of GIF says. It's not GIF, it's GIF because it's a G. Nobody pronounces GIF as GIF unless they don't know how graphic interchange format should be pronounced. I guess they say graphic interchange format. But anyway, never minding all that, we've been using basically the same 3 image formats for the last 20 years. I've been using JPEG, PNG, PNG if you want to say it that way, and GIF files. And that's been it for the last forever. So now we're seeing new sort of video or image formats that are coming out. WebP is a new one that supposedly has the same image quality as PNG while also being way smaller. I'm talking about kilobytes smaller, which is kind of awesome, actually. And so we're seeing lots of new developments in that area, which is great because the old guard is not really dying off, but it's leaving the industry. And the new guard is coming in to develop on the old guard stuff. So we're seeing a lot of cool things coming out of new programmers creating new file formats. And it's great. I'm really excited to see what's going to come out of WebP coming soon to a computer near you. Now, Chrome supports WebP with transparency, and I think Internet Explorer might. I don't know. I don't think Firefox does. And actually, no, Firefox does because I use it in Pale Moon, so I guess it does. But anyway, it's really exciting stuff anyway, is what I'm getting at. This is great for phones, too, because remember, storage plans, or rather data plans, geez, words are not coming to me today. Data plans are still kind of a problem in that most of us only have, say, gigabyte a month data plans on our smartphones. So smaller files going over faster is always a good thing for those of us who have data plans. So there's benefits there too. Well, Verizon has added an XXL plan with 18 gigabytes of data for $100 a month. So if you want 18 gigabytes of Verizon data, you can get that for $100. Apparently, Verizon's new simpler SM, L, and XL sized plans weren't enough for some customers. Very soon after unveiling its new data packages, Verizon has returned a 5th option, XXL, offering 18 gigabytes of data for $100 a month. But the carrier is already warning that this plan will be offered only for a limited time. Each of Verizon's new plans can be shared between devices. You'll pay $20 a month for each smartphone added to your account and $10 for tablets or mobile hotspots. Verizon's new plan offers more data than AT&T's 15 gigabyte plan, which also costs $100 a month. But AT&T is charging a slightly lower monthly fee for smartphones on your line, being $15 as opposed to $20. Both companies are charging an average, or rather overage penalty of $15 a gigabyte if you go over your monthly allotment, a practice that rival T-Mobile continues to rail against. With today's edition, Verizon plans now look like this. Small is $30 a month for 1 gig of data. Medium is $45 a month for 3 gigs of data. Large is $60 a month for 6 gigs of data. Extra large is $80 a month for 12 gigs of data, and XX large is $100 a month for 18 gigabytes of data. And the funny thing is, probably in 10 years, we're going to be looking back at these numbers and laughing our heads off at how tiny amounts of data we were pushing back in the day. We'll be talking about terabit per second internet, and we'll be laughing at how we were crying over how we didn't get gigabit per second internet. So hopefully that day comes quite fast, because I really am getting tired of bottlenecking, especially when we're talking about wireless, because wireless internet is not nearly as fast as wired internet, and I only have a wireless connection to my laptop here in the office, and that's kind of a problem. So wireless technology needs to get on the ball and be faster than Ethernet, or at least as fast as Ethernet. It's not really possible to be faster, but well, in entertainment news, Key and Peele have proved that the internet is leaving traditional TV behind, which is good, and really traditional TV is kind of not that great anyway. Who watches traditional TV these days? Not me. I don't know anyone who's in my age bracket who still watches traditional TV. Like, I don't know anyone who comes up to me and says, "Hey, did you see what was on ABC last night?" Like, no, I didn't, because I don't watch TV. I don't know anyone who watches TV who's my age. So why would I watch TV when I can watch anything I want instantly over the net? There's not really a whole lot of reason to watch TV. I might watch Adult Swim when MDE gets on, but other than that, pretty much that's it. Key and Peele has ended its 3-year run tonight, and that's actually kind of a big deal, according to The Verge. When news broke in July that stars Keegan-Michael Key and Jordan Peele were stepping away to do other projects, it hit fans and critics hard. The show has been called a timely successor to the Gone Too Soon Chappelle Show for its zany sensibility and biting cultural commentary, and it's actually really funny. I like Key and Peele. It's a funny show. So losing the sketch show right on the heels of Jon Stewart's departure from The Daily Show is a huge loss for Comedy Central, not to mention television in general. Now, of course, this is cable TV, not network TV, but you get the idea. But where television gave Key and Peele a platform to create a show worth paying attention to, it was really the internet that turned them into superstars, because I've never watched their TV show on TV. Never. I mean, it's not that I don't want to. It's just I never have time. I'm at work when it's on, so I don't have time to watch it. So what do? I watch them on YouTube, and that's where most people watch Key and Peele, is on YouTube. Now, isn't that an interesting idea? Perhaps the TV should be thrown out the window, and we should all use internet instead, because believe it or not, the World Wide Web is actually kind of better than waiting for a program to come on. That's such an outdated idea anyway. I don't want to wait for a program to come on. Why would I do that? I want to watch a program when I want to watch a program. So I'm not going to sit there and wait, unless it's news, where you kind of have to wait, because news doesn't just happen at the snap of a finger, unless it's a news story about the man who has the world record for most snapping of fingers. But anyway, it's really just news is the only thing that you really have to wait for. Entertainment shouldn't have to be waited on unless it's waiting for the new season to come out on Netflix, and that's about it. While the series Key and Peele consistently pulled in pretty decent ratings for Comedy Central, it also attracted hundreds of millions of views on YouTube, landing its creators on magazine covers and in the New Yorker, I should say. TV was just a jumping off point. That's sort of a platform. It gave them legitimacy, and the internet was really where they took off. So Key and Peele is a case study for a new quandary for TV. There is a clear divide in what linear television and digital media can mean for a show, and bridging that divide as audiences move online is the network's big task. Now, there is one benefit to TV in that TV has budget, and if you're an internet comedian, you probably don't have budget. Key and Peele, if they were just regular guys who are also very funny, who came out with internet videos, don't know if they get the same funding as they would from, say, a network, not really network, but a cable TV station like Comedy Central. So that's a jumping off point. It's really a promotional point, but it's not so much necessary to their brand, although the funding certainly did help. So the internet quickly overtaking network TV is certainly an interesting thing. After all, we're seeing huge budget shows coming out of Netflix. So it's really giving network television a run for its money. In fact, network television is not really that much watched anymore. I mean, for instance, we all know this particular cable news station that talks about how it's the most watched cable news station on America anyway. But that's not saying a whole lot because they're only pulling a few million watchers a day. And believe it or not, that's not that great when we're seeing YouTube videos that get millions and millions of views. And so really, they're not pulling that good numbers. It's saying that you're the most watched cable news channel or whatever is really not saying a whole lot. That's like saying I'm the most listened to, I'm the most listened to harmonica player. It's like not a whole lot of people sit down and listen to harmonica. I'm the most listened to hurdy-gurdy player. Who the heck sits down and listens to a hurdy-gurdy? Not a whole lot of people, but I'm the most listened to hurdy-gurdy player. See, it's sort of the same thing with cable television, where saying you're the most watched cable TV station is not really saying a whole heck of a lot because there are a lot of cable TV stations. So your watcher base is going to be spread out over a whole bunch of different stations, and it runs into a whole bunch of problems. But anyway, cable TV is, I don't know if it's dying, but it's certainly in ill health as of now. Well, a man has gotten, in a similar vein, a man has gotten a 4-year sentence for trying to get away from cable TV. Sorry, dude. He's gotten a 4-year sentence for streaming movies in the UK. Actually, in Northern Ireland, which is the only part of Ireland that is in the UK, the United Kingdom. A Northern Ireland man has been sentenced to 4 years for running a piracy streaming website called FastPass TV, as well as related sites that link to pirated content. Free Derry resident Paul Mahoney, 29, pled guilty to conspiracy to defraud, acquiring criminal property, and concealing criminal property, according to the Derry Journal. Now, keep in mind that the UK is a place where you have to get a television license. That's not a joke. You have to get a television license. In the UK, you must get a license in order to watch TV, and it's a certain subscription fee. And you have to pay more if you're going to watch color TV. I'm not joking. You really do have to buy a cable TV, or not cable, pardon, a color TV license to watch color TV. The UK is a little bit outdated, to say the least. So FastPass TV is the website that he was using, as well as related sites that link to pirated content. Paul Mahoney, who's 29, pled guilty to conspiracy to defraud, acquiring criminal property, and concealing criminal property, according to the Derry Journal. Now, these are TV programs. It's not like he stole a car or like was importing weapons. It's nothing like that was happening, at least as far as we know. He was watching TV. So the Derry Crown Court Judge Philip Babington says, offending such as this affects everyone in society at the end of the day, although primarily the interests of those involved in film production, the results of which we all enjoy, never minding the fact that people who pirate television are most likely to actually buy movies, which is kind of odd. People who pirate movies are more likely to buy movies on Blu-ray and DVD, which is kind of funny. But anyway, 2 years of Mahoney's sentence will be spent in jail, while another 2 will be on license, similar to parole in the U.S. Now, answer me this. Riddle me this, Batman. Do you really think that you should get 2 years in jail for basically watching flashing images on a computer screen? Like, really? Is that so criminal that you should spend 2 years in prison? It's not like the guy stole a car or broke into somebody's house or broke into MGM and stole their film reels or anything like that. Nothing on that line happened. He watched some stuff on a computer screen, and that's the extent of it. Nothing really major happened. So why is he getting 2 years in prison? Probably to make an example out of him. Northern Ireland police told the Derry News that they began an investigation of Mahoney after being told about the site by the Federation Against Copyright Theft, or FACT, an anti-piracy trade group in the United Kingdom, sort of similar to the MPAA here. The police said that Mahoney made more than £28,000 in advertising revenue from his site, which is about $43,000. A search of his property in 2011 turned up about £82,000, which was seized, I should say, along with 3 computers, they said. That cash will be subject to forfeiture proceedings. From his bedroom in Carnhill, Mahoney thought that he could make money from advertisers who were attracted by the volume of traffic from across the world on his website. Detective Constable Yolande Healy told the Derry News. He thought his form of cybercrime was untouchable. He was wrong. Ooh, those deadly cybercrimes. News reports state that the site was operating from 2008 until 2013. Not a very long period of time. The Register News reports that Mahoney is single, lived at home with his mother and stepfather, and hadn't actually worked since leaving school. Sounds pretty ideal, actually. The publication cited court documents saying that Mahoney had congenital albinism that left him partially sighted. So the dude tries to find a way to make money that's not really hurting anybody. And when he does, you put him in jail for 2 years. And the guy has congenital albinism and he's partially sighted. I don't think he's going to do very well in prison. The prosecutor estimated that the millions of views resulting from Mahoney's sites would have been valued at $120 million if each view had been replaced with a legitimate purchase at a cinema or DVD store. People actually still watch DVDs, since many viewers never would have made a purchase. So the prosecutor put the loss at about $12 million or $18.5 million. And that's something else that needs to be realized too, is while people who pirate movies are actually more likely to go buy a DVD or a Blu-ray than people who don't, there also is a population of pirators, I guess, piracy people who aren't just not going to buy them anyway. They're only watching the pirated movie because it's there. And that does need to be acknowledged, but you'd think that a solution would be available. Perhaps something such as, I don't know, maybe better availability, like no region locking. That's a good idea. Perhaps the rating system is a little bit broken. There are lots of different problems that lead to movie piracy. And it seems that the movie industry never wants to admit that the chief reason for movie piracy is the movie studios themselves. So really the problem's not being addressed. Instead of addressing the problem, they're saying it's the viewers who are the problem. People who want to watch our movies are wrong somehow. The prosecutor estimated that 120 million pounds had been lost. I don't know if that's true. Criminal prosecutions in the U.S. over online piracy are rare, and a high-profile case against Kim.com is mired in disputes over extradition. In the UK, they're far more common. An earlier case against a site called Surf the Channel was also inspired by Fact. In that case, when prosecutors didn't pursue the case, Fact actually brought a criminal prosecution on its own, which is not even possible here in the United States. Piracy is not a big deal, though, is the thing. People are acting like piracy is just a blight on society. It's really not. Movie piracy is not something that I would worry about if I were myself embodying a movie studio, which would be very interesting. But really, movie piracy is not a big deal, as big a deal as people like to make it out to be. Because after all, nothing beats the theater experience, and movie pirates know that. Clutch of Kiel Rose is coming up next year on Hot News Talk Radio. Is going to be talking about sports, his picks, and all that sort of stuff right here on Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240, and hotnewstalkradio.com as well on the TuneIn Radio app for your smartphone right here, Hot News Talk Radio.
This is a mob mode. This is the mob